Whoever wishes to be great among you will be your servant. Jesus demonstrated being a servant by dying on the cross. He gave his life as a ransom for many. And so today we're held up this example of servanthood. The world has a different idea of greatness, of what it means to be great. So in a worldly view, it's whoever has the most power, or whoever has the most wins, whoever has the largest corner office, or the biggest house, or the fastest boat, or the highest GPA. These are all ways that the world measures greatness. As you might know, each week in the liturgical cycle, the first reading and the gospel are usually tied together. And today especially, we see this link, and it shows us that Jesus is defining greatness in a different way. So we begin with our Old Testament reading. It's Isaiah chapter 53, and it's one of the suffering servant songs. It's the fourth one. And in it, the prophet Isaiah, he's prophesying 500 years before Christ. And he is telling that this king is coming. And the people at that time were thinking in a worldly way. They were looking for a king who had military power over other people. And Isaiah is saying this prophet, or this king who's coming, is one who is going to have power by suffering. And so it is something that it's very hard for people to grasp. Isaiah says, "Through his suffering my servant shall justify many, and their guilt he shall bear." We know today that this servant that Isaiah was talking about is Jesus. So Jesus died on the cross. He gave his life as a ransom for many. Today's gospel reading, it has Zebedee's sons, James and John, and they too are confused about what greatness is. They ask Jesus, "We want to sit at your right and your left." And Jesus tells them, "You don't even know what you're asking." Here's the verse specifically. "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right or at my left is not mine to give." In that verse, it starts off talking about the cup that they will drink. And that is a reference to today as well. So in the Eucharist, we receive the blood of Christ, so we can participate in that way. The verse also talks about baptism. So in the early church and today, the understanding is at baptism, let's hope that goes away. So in baptism, we die to self, and we are born again in new life. So in those two ways, all of us can participate, receiving the Eucharist, being baptized. The part that Jesus says he can't give to James and John is this position of power to sit at his right and his left. And why is it that he can't give that to them? He says that it's only for his Father to give, only for the people that his Father has prepared for him. As I was thinking about suffering this week, I was thinking in my own life at a time when I was unemployed, and several months had gone by and I still didn't have any leads on a new job, and it was getting closer to Christmas. And one morning, one of my sons noticed that there was a wrapped package on our doorstep. And so he asked, can he get it and open it? And so I said, sure. We had no idea who the package was from or anything like that. And he opened it up, and inside was this book titled Christmas Jars. And also in the box was a glass jar that was full of coins. Well, my kids got even more excited when they dumped out the coins, and in the middle of the jar there was cash. And so this jar wasn't enough to pay my mortgage that month, but it made me see that Christ cared for me. In this book, it talks about other situations as well, of what people need, not necessarily financial, but in the ways that we can become servant to serve the needs of others. Financial situations, when you're in them, they're difficult, but the solution is kind of clear. Money can solve the situation. But I think of other types of suffering that money can't solve, that they're much worse. So thinking about when a spouse dies after many years of marriage, or if your child dies, or a relative who is ill and has some disease that can't be cured. All of these are examples of suffering, and all of them give us the opportunity to connect our suffering with the suffering that Christ did. Today's gospel, it ends with this verse, "For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." James, who's in the gospel reading, he died a martyr's death. And if we're given the opportunity to die for Christ, we need to embrace that and to volunteer to be a martyr as well. That is what truly being a servant is. Today we're celebrating World Mission Sunday. It began in 1927, and they looked out in the world and said, where do missionaries need to go to? Kind of where can we send people? Send them out as servants to spread the word of God. It's whether we're sending missionaries to other people or whether we are proclaiming the gospel message to our neighbor, it's when we become a servant that we truly become great in the eyes of Jesus Christ.